Football on Off the Ball.
With William Hill, you can boost your winnings on the Sunday game with new Bet Builder Extra. Only with William Hill. Download the app today. 18 plus gamblingcare.ie.
This is News Talk.
Yeah, welcome along to Who You Got, where we try to pick with varying degrees of success and failure the weekend's Premier League fixtures, joined by Kathleen and Will today. It's a skeleton post-Christmas crew, but dare I say, it's a bit A-teamy, because we're going to look at the results over Christmas. Our last round, it was before, the Christmas before, we skipped a week. Have we got the results, Andy? From the last day, and there you see Kathleen, top of the table. She got a correct score. Your second week in a row with a correct score, Kathleen, which is boosted you up the table. Me in second place there in the week, and Will in third place, both with 3 correct. And give us the overall table there. And you'll see Kathleen has jumped up to mid-table with a very, very good Christmas period, good festive period. She's kind of the Crystal Palace of this division. Will, very much to Liverpool, out on top, 46 points. Steady Christmas, I would say, kind of maintained your lead. And me, very much the Arsenal, Nottingham Forest, jumping up the table into 43 points, just 3 behind you, and holding off John and Nathan, who have been kind of knocking around there on the same. I think they've both been on the same score for about 5-6 weeks now.
There's something beautifully 1979 about the current Premier League table when you look at Liverpool, Arsenal, Nottingham Forest as the top 3.
Yeah.
We've been transported back. There was a lot of 1979s, I think, over the Christmas weekend. Fulham beat Chelsea for the first time since that year as well, away from home, and just kind of a bizarre Christmas. I'm glad we didn't have a Who You Got around the New Year's fixtures, because some of them were a bit wonky, and I think we would have really poor scores if we did last week.
See, that's the voice of a front runner who doesn't want the kind of the wacky weeks to come in, because he doesn't feel like he can, the less weeks the better, I suppose.
I'm looking at the New Year's fixtures. We would have said Arsenal beat Brentford most likely. Ipswich Chelsea is probably the one that no one would have got.
All over the place on that.
Yeah.
Villa
Likely would have
Brighton,
left that one out.
A few people I'd say would have said a draw.
I'd say we
Villa
would have had
Brighton.
7 out of 10 draws in that one, yeah.
Newcastle United.
Would anyone have gone Newcastle to win to 0 at Old Trafford? I know they're on a good run of form.
Well,
we'll never know.
Look, you mentioned various things since 1979 and so on. Manchester United have been a meme's best friend this week, because it's all been since 1964 and different things, since they've gone this long without, or they've been this low since, and so on and so forth. They're at Anfield this week. That's our match of the week. We're going to start with that. Let's have a look at what we picked. They also, I mentioned their scoreline, or you said, did anyone have them to 0? They haven't scored since Amad Diallo's goal in the last minute against Manchester City, which was 3 full Premier League games ago. Everybody here, all 10 of us, have picked Liverpool to win by some huge scores. So I can't see these because I'm far too blind and forgot my glasses, but I believe we have 3-1s, we have a 5-1, we have a 4-0, a 3-0, a 4-0, a 6-0 from Shane Hannon. There's a self-hating
really
Manchester United fan if ever there was one.
I think I've been more conservative than most on this one.
You and Phil both have 2-0.
Yeah, despite the fact that Liverpool are going to completely control this fixture, and they're not going to, United aren't going to lay a glove on them with the form they've shown the last 4 games, and their form at Anfield has been horrific over the last kind of 8-9 years in particular, but even just against Liverpool more generally. So when United got in 2022, was the only win in the last 13 where they've played against Liverpool in the league. They haven't won in their last 8 trips to Anfield, and they haven't scored in their last 4. So the idea of this being a shutout by Liverpool, I think, is a very strong possibility. And the last 2 3-0s that Liverpool got in the league at Old Trafford, which were the last 2 times the teams have met, I felt Liverpool could have scored way more, but didn't. I'm kind of half expecting that type of game where Liverpool are going to be massively on top. They'll miss some chances, but will come away at the end of Sunday afternoon and think, you know what, Liverpool just strolled to a 2 or 3-0 win there.
So Liverpool's performance against West Ham last week was a little bit of it. Like, that's kind of the first time they've done that. It's the first time they've gone out, been way the better team, taken care of business, played well from 1 to 90, and dominated and hammered the team in a while. Not all season or anything like that, but generally they've been falling behind, or they've been sort of labouring through and then finishing really, really strongly. And an incredible virtue in itself, this ability to kind of make sure you can turn around the game and win them. But to see them on that kind of form they were Sunday is sort of ominous, and it hasn't been an overly busy Christmas period. You think they're going to be super fresh. United, no matter how bad they get, will never be a team that people take lightly or don't expect or don't kind of bring their best game for, and it will mean so much for them to go out and I think honestly the best hope Manchester United have in this game is the game getting postponed for weather and meeting them later in the year.
Yeah.
I really do. Only Colm Owen and Ger have gone for them to score. They're in heavy defeats. The rest of us have all gone for United to continue this scoreless streak. And watching them against Newcastle the other night, I don't know where a goal is going to come from.
My thing with Liverpool is that it's just the variety of scorers they have, and I think that's the thing United are really going to struggle with. Obviously, you have Salah in there, who's in absolutely exceptional form, so you focus on him. But then there are 4 or 5 other people who have scored consistently over the last 6 weeks in particular, and that seems something Arne Slot is really focusing on, is having that variety within the team. And I just don't know how United are going to be able to cope with that. I think this is the sort of game they're going to go in and just completely bed in. I don't think Amarin's going to try anything fancy. That's why I went for a 0 result, because I don't think he's even going to be looking at scoring. Maybe something random happens and a penalty is given away or someone gets a chance, but I just really don't see where those goals are going to come from, and also what sort of style of play that Manchester United could go out and do, which would lead to any sort of score. And without losing 2 or 3 goals as a result.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the formula for them to do it, and funny enough, we have 2 examples of United doing a good job against Liverpool recently, and one of them was the 0-0 draw at Anfield with the random Dallo sending off the 2 yellow cards. But other than that, a flawless defensive display from United. And then the other one is obviously the FA Cup game last year, which was just turned the game into utter chaos. And I just wonder if this United team, and it's not we've had the Amarim debate loads of times, there's no point in going into it again. It's not a long-term assessment of Amarim, but it's where they currently are with playing within a structure they're uncomfortable with the personnel that they have. I don't know if either of those options are available to them successfully this weekend. Yeah. I don't know if they can close it down, because I think they look so at sea. And I think your point about the amount of options Liverpool have to score them, I think will overwhelm that defence. I can't see how that 5 or that 7, if you include the 2 midfielders, are able to cope with that amount of, with basically attacks coming from every angle on the pitch, and from deep and from all sort of different levels, from all sort of different widths. And I just don't know how they can cope with it. And then likewise, if they go to try and have a bit of a shootout and just say let's throw all tactics out the window and have a bit of a derby match and kick hard and hit them on the counter constantly, I think Liverpool mopped them up. So we could all be wrong here. And as I said, there are 2 examples of United doing this, but I just can't see it. I can't see it.
Sometimes it comes to rival matches as well, logic goes out the window. We think of Celtic against Rangers yesterday, where Rangers are missing 2-3 of their best players against a Celtic team who've been rampant all season, and go and win 3-0. Bizarre things can happen. But to your point on the way that United set up, so United beat Manchester City by being good on the counter-attack against a team who were incredibly susceptible to being beaten in one-on-one counter-attacking positions. And it was actually the pace of Amad Diallo particularly that caused huge problems for them. I think Liverpool, despite the fact that Andy Robertson has had some rocky periods during this season, with the exception of him maybe in that area, they're really good at defending counter-attacks against themselves as well. And even compared to Klopp's teams, I think Arne Slot's Liverpool are much better at actually taking control of the ball and not putting themselves in positions where they're going to be caught one-on-one on the counter as well. So Manchester United's strongest strength could well be neutralised by the way that Liverpool have been playing as well. It's very difficult to make an argument that Manchester United are going to Anfield and are going to throw rip up the script entirely and beat them on the counter-attack. It's very, very difficult to see it. And just to the Mo Salah point as well, his record against Man United is absolutely incredible. So he's the top scorer against them in Premier League history. He's got 12 goals against them. If you look at his numbers this season, they're absolutely sick. 17 goals and 13 assists he has so far. They're Thierry Henry 2003-2004 numbers. And he's doing so while also having a supporting cast around him, as Kathleen said, who are well able to chip in, especially Luis Diaz this season. So it's a scary enough prospect for United. I think I can understand why Shane Hannon has gone for 6-0. I don't think he's doing that just to be different to everyone else. There is that possibility that if Liverpool open them up and United concede a couple of goals early, this could get messy.
I also think the interesting thing about Salah this season is because of the way Arne Slot has set up his team, it's allowing Salah, well, he doesn't have the legs to run as much as fit as he is. He doesn't have the legs to run as much as he used to, but he's also playing in that higher position, and as a result, he's getting the majority of his goals are coming in the second half because he actually then has the fitness compared to all the defenders around him that have been trying to keep track of him for the first 60 odd minutes to make sure he doesn't get the goals, and then he's just whipping them in one after the other. It's so impressive what he's doing this season and what he is on track to do Like, it's going to be a record-breaking season for him if he doesn't get injured and keeps up what his like XG is at the moment.
I've come around to the way of thinking. I think he's the best player in Premier League history now at this stage. I think Cristiano Ronaldo's best years were outside of the Premier League. I think Cristiano Ronaldo is the best player who has played in the Premier League.
I think it's a very definitive statement.
Yeah, but
he's one of. Yeah.
ESPN did a really good piece about this during the week, comparing Ronaldo and Messi at various different ages and whether certain players were better than them or not at that age. And at the age of 32, Salah was better than both.
See, this is it. The idea that Salah isn't playing his best football, and I think I kind of want to talk about the contract thing, because we're still in this mindset. I think that someone hits 30. I remember like with the big four in the tennis, and obviously Andy Murray's body broke down, but the other three kind of kept going longer. There was this assumption that because the generation before and the generation before that were finished at 28, 29, then they necessarily had to be. And I always think it's like evolution is something that happens over hundreds of years, right? It's not something that happens in a generation. But dietary and training and all of that, like, literally kind of was invented from the clear blue sky, in the early 2000s almost, in terms of like versus what they did before versus what they do now. The idea that we have to measure when somebody's body is shutting down versus what it was 20, 30 years ago is ludicrous, and it's like you see it in Messi and Ronaldo, and now I think it's even kicking on again. Like, Salah is one of the fittest players in Premier League history. He's never really had any kind of serious long-term injuries. He's had a couple of bone breaks, all right, but like no mad muscle problems or anything like that. It makes perfect sense that he should still be at his best at 32.
Yeah.
It doesn't really make any sense that he isn't. And this is the contract thing that I keep talking about, right? It's like there's no sign. It would take a weird decline for him not to be again as good this year in terms of fitness, right? Form is whatever it is,
Yeah.
So say you give him a 2-year contract at a raise, say he goes up to 500 grand, and I don't see why there's this assumption, by the way, that he should be on the same wage because he's getting older. It's like who else can continue signs new contracts in like this for the same wage as opposed to going up, right? So he goes up. That costs, I think we worked it out as something like 25 million, something like that a year for Liverpool. Or maybe it's more than that. Sorry, maybe I have the maths all wrong, but I think it's around that. I think it's about 25 million a year so that's 50 million commitment to Mo Salah. If they let Mo Salah go for free, they're buying someone for more money than that on equal wages who is unlikely, if not definitely not going to have the same output over those 2 years. So their asset will drop off. They won't get anything for him in the 2 years, but the investment will be worth it for those 2 years. It's crazy that they won't pay him. People aren't thinking about this logically. They're thinking about you can't pay a guy at that age because of it's almost like an outdated mode of thinking about what the asset is worth. That asset is worth nothing to him if he walks out now anyway. But they invest in it sounds like insane money, and it is in a way, but think of what the transfer fee will be for someone that they pay. And if they buy someone for 100 million, lads, they're paying him 500 grand a week. They're not paying him 100 grand and saving over the long term on what Salah's getting. You know what I mean? So it's like, I really don't think that you get what you can out of this guy. He is one of the best players in your club's history. You said he's the best player in the league's history. I'd say he's one of the best, and he is going to win you the league this season. And he's playing better than he ever has.
Oh, I absolutely think Liverpool should pay him. I think it's ridiculous that they haven't already got this sewn up and done.
Now, unless he's looking for something absolutely bananas, but I think he's looking to probably move from 350 to 500, and he's looking for 2 years instead of one.
Yeah, so
that'd be my. It's
the last big paycheck. Like, I can understand why people would be concerned that there is a long history of players dropping off in their mid-30s where their form can go entirely downhill, and then you end up with a player who you have an albatross around your neck of paying them a huge amount of money while you're not going to be able to shift them for any money because of their age. But I think given that everything that Mo Salah has done for Liverpool as well, he has earned this deal.
Yeah.
And the way he's playing at the moment, if you were looking
But he continues to earn it, though. That's the problem.
Yeah.
There's that people will look at that and say you have to be the successful clubs are coldest. And, like if somebody's time is up, then they cut bait, and that's fine. They dropped Wijnaldum and everybody thought it was a mistake, and he has done nothing in football since. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? That was a cold, hard move. That was the right thing to do based on the data they had. I just don't see how. I don't think you can just apply it blindly to every situation.
Do you imagine how much you'd have to pay to sign Mo Salah? If Liverpool were looking to get him in the window, it's just...
But also, none of the Liverpool hierarchy either wants to, when it comes to the summer, and if he hasn't signed a deal and they have won the title, and then he goes on and wins the Ballon d'Or. Like, you don't want to be the person who was responsible for sorting that contract, and then all of a sudden it's like, actually, we lost the Ballon d'Or winner and he's gone to, I don't know, wherever he decides to go on to, say he goes to Madrid or somewhere, and he continues to do what he does. You know, that would be a massive slap in the face for whoever stands over that.
I still think he stays, by the way. I think
when it comes down to it, he will too. Yeah,
I think Trent Alexander-Arnold leaves and the other two stay.
Yeah. All right. Well, Salah to score this week might have been one of the bets we could have looked at with William Hill and Lee Phelps for a charity bet. We're going to talk about the Spurs and Newcastle game, though, because that's where we want to do our charity bet. But Lee, how are you? Happy New Year. Hope you had a good Christmas. Everybody has gone for a heavy Liverpool win in this game. Is that what the market's looking at too?
Yeah, the Spurs-Newcastle game. Yeah, I think.
Sorry. Before we move on to that, the Liverpool-United game, I was just saying, we were just talking about that there. All 10 of us have gone for, I think, more 2 goals or more. Some have gone as high as 6-0.
Yeah, absolutely. I've done a bet builder for that game, and I've gone for over 2.5 Liverpool goals in that as part of the bet builder. I mean, it's just hard to see how Manchester United can put up enough of a defence against this Liverpool side. No goals, no points in the last 3. Liverpool scored 14 goals in that same period. I mean, I know this is a derby game in a sense. You know, I know it's not geographically a derby game, but it's one of the biggest games. And yeah, form can go out the window, but I mean, you've got to have some form to be able to throw it out of the window, first of all. And Man United have got none of it, have they? So, yeah, absolutely. And the market reflects that, really. Interestingly, Manchester United aren't as big a price as they were when they played City in the season, when City were, flying. But there's still a big old price. There's some interesting games this weekend. There's some really, I think, if Liverpool get through this one with no problems, then it's hard to see where they falter, isn't it?
It's starting to look that way, yeah. Like, I mean, you're starting to do mental gymnastics to see how they get caught, because even if you think like Arsenal or whoever, the idea of them winning every game, and then where, like, do Liverpool have to lose maybe 6 games if Arsenal drop, even play well for the rest of the season? It's hard to see. It just
seems really unrealistic, doesn't it? And I tend to think once you get past this period, whether you're looking at the bottom of the table or the top or wherever, the average points that a team's got by this point, it doesn't change drastically. I know there are exceptions to that rule. Think about relegation when West Brom got out of trouble that time. There are exceptions to the rule, but generally your points per game tends to stick to that. City are one of the teams who can go against that, and they can go on long, not just unbeaten, but long winning runs. Whether they can do it this season is highly debatable. But in the past they've shown that they can just go on these long winning runs. Incidentally, talking about Mo Salah there, he's now odds on to win Player of the Year, and also odds on to win the Golden Boot, of course, which he leads at the moment. So yeah, Liverpool odds on to win the title. So it looks like they've got it up. From a betting point of view right now, everything's on Liverpool.
Yeah, great time to ship him out, Liverpool, and not bother paying him. We're gonna jump in next on to Spurs and Newcastle, because I think there's a lot of interest in that. It's where our charity bet is coming from. Other than that, though, do you have anything that you're looking at this weekend for us?
Well, I mean, I think there's some interesting accas out there. I mean, I think Arsenal do win at Brighton in that game, a tea time game. I think Man City do win again, by the way, beating West Ham. I think West Ham are pretty poor. I like Villa at home to Leicester. Leicester are pretty desperate. Villa pretty good at home, maybe struggle a little bit on the road. Then in the Championship, Leeds to win at Hull. Leeds are flying at the moment. And Stoke have taken on Mark Robbins, and I think there could be a bounce there at home to Plymouth, who are the bottom club, who are woeful on the road, pretty much woeful everywhere, really. So I like that as an acca. There's a few bet builders that are out there. I think the Arsenal game's really interesting for a bet builder as well. And I put one together on this Spurs-Newcastle match as well. Plenty going on. It's like that first full weekend of the new year. Some clubs will be full of hope, and some will be dreading it, won't they, after the Christmas that they've had, Man United included. Interestingly, Man United, Southampton and Leicester probably had the worst Christmases. And you think, well, those two teams are relegation threatened. Manchester United need to start picking points up soon, because they could get dragged in. We've seen money for them, over the Christmas period to be relegated, which, I mean, is still a decent enough price, by the way, but, there obviously is bigger prices, way bigger than 33-1. There were 33-1 going into that Christmas period, and they've just been chipped away at over the Christmas period. So, yeah, they need some points from somewhere. Don't think they're going to come at Anfield, but,
Yeah, not in the next couple of weeks, I would say. But if Ipswich keeps beating top 6 teams, then suddenly that 7 points is going to get a bit smaller. One other team that probably didn't have the most fun Christmas was Spurs. I'm looking at 10 picks here for this game against Newcastle. And I don't know if we think they're playing Kevin Keegan's Newcastle or what's going on, but only one of the 10 that Shane has Newcastle winning 2-1 has less than 4 goals in the selection, all independently picked by 10 people. Yeah. So it's bound to be 0-0, isn't it? Really,
It's hard to see that, though, the way Spurs play. It's very hard to see that happening. In fact, just to back up your stat, since Eddie Howe took over, in the games between these two, they've shared 33 league goals. That's almost 5 a game on average. But his team is on a run of 4 straight clean sheets, isn't it? So, which is pretty unheard of for them as well. So that's the only fly in the ointment for this over 3.5 bet. Look, it's odds on. It's 17 to 20, just a touch of odds on. That means we get €18.50 back to the tenner stake. So 8.50 would go on to our total. We had 3 winners, by the way, fairly recently. So we're kind of starting to tick along nicely. Still in the red, but we need a few more winners. So I can see why you're going for it. That was part of my bet builder, but I just went with over 1.5 Newcastle goals just because of that clean sheet that they've been keeping. And will Spurs score against them? Spurs have got some serious injury problems. Newcastle have as well, by the way. But I do think there'll be attempts on goal. I like, obviously, Dominic Solanke. I had got him to have at least 1 shot on target. Same for Alexander-Isak. They've both got really good records against these clubs. Isak scored 5 against Spurs. Solanke for Bournemouth scored 3 against Newcastle as well. So, and I also like Radu Dragushin to be booked. Andrew Postecoglou was saying that he wasn't fully fit in the game. He was forced to play him in the last game. Well, it looks like he'll play again. So if that's the case, I quite like him to pick up a yellow card. So those 4 for my bet builder are around 11 to 1. But yeah, let's go with the over 3.5 match goals. It's hard to see how it won't be, a 3-1 or a 3-2 or something crazy like that. 17 to 20 the price for that for the bet of the week.
Okay, we'll take that. Lee, thanks very much. We'll talk to you next week.
Cheers, guys. Enjoy.
Cheers to Lee. And who you got is in association with William Hill. Remember, you must be over 18 and visit gamblingcare.ie for more info. So let's look at the picks for this game. This is 12:30 tomorrow, by the way. Notoriously the game of the week.
Half time. Tune in at half time.
Like, the picks are mad. Like, this is I was talking to Lee about our pick as you guys were sending in the picks last night, and most of you were kind of like sending them in via text as opposed to on our usual thing. So you weren't seeing everybody's picks, and everybody's gone kind of mad for this. So Colin has 3-1 to Newcastle. Owen has 3-2 to Newcastle. Jer's 4-3. Ger tends to do these things, but I think it's quite a sensible one here. John has Spurs winning. John never afraid to go out on a limb, and he's gone for 2-1. Actually, there was 2-2-1s. Apologies, I got that wrong earlier. Kathleen, you've 3-2 to Newcastle. I've 3-1 to Newcastle. Nathan's gone for a draw, 2-2, one of only 2 results to go against Newcastle at the Tottenham Stadium, which is mad. 3-2 for Phil, 2-1 for Shane, and 3-1 like myself, Will. I've watched Newcastle twice last week. They were brilliant against Villa. It was a hard game to kind of judge because the Duran sending off just completely scuppered it. But up until that point, they'd scored a great goal. It was an even game. They always play well against Villa. They're just, I don't know what it is, but Howe tends to have Emery's number. They've given us a few hammerings over the last couple of years. But just watching them in that game, and you're thinking, this is a team of high quality that's making a lot of sense at the moment. And then watching them in the first half the other night against United, like, United were terrible. Like, that's not, but we shouldn't always focus on the big team. Newcastle were brilliant. Yeah. And if you look at that shape of that team, with Gordon playing as well as he is, with Isak looking like the best striker in the league, and with Gamirez and Tonali in midfield, Tonali playing a little bit deeper, you had players then that like good role players like Jacob Murphy or whoever. You can probably build around the sort of back 4 and a couple of players in midfield, but generally the spine of that team is superb. And they're on an amazing run of form at the moment. And it's weird because you still see Spurs as a big team despite their form, but I actually can't see Newcastle not winning this game.
Same. I think Newcastle have been very impressive kind of both ends in the last 4 or 5 games. So the first 15 games of the season, like Lee's already mentioned, they kept 4 clean sheets over the last few weeks. First 15, there was a bit Felt like they were feeling their way into the season a little bit. A lot was made of the fact that they totally tailored their preparation for the season differently. And maybe that press that was there in the last couple of seasons under Eddie Howe wasn't quite as vociferous in the first kind of dozen games of the season. But as that has kind of slowly kicked into gear, and Isak's form has now kicked up.
And I actually left out a player who's so important to that in Joelinton. Like that those three in midfield together are as good a combo, I think, as there is, you know?
Yeah, and like Joelinton also gives them an extra option if they do decide to go a little bit more direct and launch a few balls into the box as well. And we saw that in the Villa game. And then against United, they were just so composed and they were all over United, swarming them in the first half of that game. I think they've been really, really impressive the last few matches. So you're talking about two teams who've got the most contrasting of forms. Like Newcastle, really good the last 4 games. It's difficult to say anything overly positive about Spurs' last 5, really, in all competitions, with the exception of that crazy EFL Cup game that they had against Manchester United.
That was as bad as anything.
Yeah.
They're all over the shop. Like they're as crazy a team as I can actually remember. I don't remember a team making less sense over the course of this long a period.
It's like if you were trying to describe them on a piece of paper, it would be impossible. Like it
Burn it, light
and that would probably be the most accurate representation of what Spurs has been this season. But even you think of that like Liverpool game, like the chaos almost suited Liverpool in a way because they were able to get the goals. And every so often you're like, oh my God, are Spurs actually going to pull this off? And then you're like, no, it's Spurs this season. Of course they're not going to pull it off.
But the funny thing is, their forward options are superb. Like, you know, it's like Kulusevski is playing the best he's ever played. You have Son is still Son, right? He's probably not at his height or whatever, but you'd still have him in any
But
team.
there's no connection between that
has done well, you would say.
Forward line and all the rest of the team.
It's just chaos, like, and they're so open. They've got a lot of injuries in the players that they don't want injured, I would say. You know, if you, it mightn't even be the people, the numbers versus some other teams, but they're the people you don't want gone from that team.
You want your goalkeeper, you want Romero, and you want Van de Ven
100%,
essentially, you know, the base in which you build everything from. With them missing, and we talked to John Wilson about
the goalkeeper's a joke. Like you can't have Fraser Foster being your backup goalkeeper. Like that's a planning issue. That's not bad luck.
Yeah.
He can't be your backup keeper if you want to play the way
there has to be a youth goalkeeper who can play more consistent to their style than Forster. Because it's not like he's making really good saves anyway. And he's hurting them by not being able to sweep, and he's hurting them by not being able to play the ball out. And then similarly, if you've got defenders who are effectively going in to fill gaps within the defence at the moment, you can't rely on the halfway line as an extra defender, especially when there's very little pace in that defence at the moment.
Yeah. The only thing I'll say, though, in terms of the setting it all on fire and the thing is, like, we're saying I'm picking on Newcastle's form rather than Tottenham's. Spurs are still less predictable than United, say. United's kind of form. United are in that position where they're like, I can't see any good coming of it. Spurs still do have that ability to turn it on. Like they've had big wins, and like they've hammered City, they've hammered Villa. They turn it on, and their goal difference is spectacular. They've had like loads of really big wins this year, but they're 11th in the table, and they're like.
I just don't think Newcastle is the sort of team that they can turn that on against, though.
No, I do agree with that.
I know what you're saying, but I don't think...
I'm wary of them, though. I'm always scared of Spurs, no matter how far they fall, I suppose.
But that's the whole point of, like, the burning piece of paper, because... And, like, it goes back, and maybe in some ways, to the whole, like, Spursy cliche, but they do have the talent there. They do have the ability, as you said, that forward attacking options are brilliant. They can get goals. That's not a problem to them. It's just that whenever there's a counter-attack or whenever they go up, you're not confident that they're going to hold on to that lead, or that they're going to hold, even if it's 1-1, that they're going to hold on. You know that in the next 5 to 10 minutes, they're probably going to concede.
Yeah.
Can't help but feel the game against Liverpool in the League Cup is possibly more important than this one.
So I don't know, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. I kind of tend to agree that, and it's funny, John disagreed that like winning a League Cup would save Ange and that it would matter all that much. I kind of feel like it would. Now, he did make a good point that Mourinho was sacked while waiting for a Wembley final by Levy, who, you know, seemingly doesn't mind that there's trophy droughts at Spurs. But at the same time, I think winning the League Cup would be a big deal, and it would be a big stepping stone to try and build something there. At the same time, though, the way it's gone this year, the way it's so strong, that you have 2 legs against Liverpool, who would put out a decent team, you would imagine.
You think so, yeah.
You would have to beat them over 2 legs and then go a final that could be against Arsenal.
Yeah.
Or like Newcastle, as we just talked about, like are obviously a formidable foe. But if it's against Arsenal, Spurs and Arsenal, suddenly that's a huge task. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but it's like you're looking 3 games down the line. So sometimes when you have a big team in a League Cup semi-final, it can feel like you're only in the quarters.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's not like we're not just like a game from Wembley kind of thing. Like so, I think it's a big thing for them to suddenly put their season on hold because of a League Cup run.
And the other thing is, top 5 obviously gets the Champions League this season because of the way the English teams have been doing.
How are they going to get in the top 5?
That's the thing. It feels a long way away. I know City have 2 wins in 14. They're sitting 6th at the moment. So it's bizarre how
it's
the
all
teams
very
at the moment
tight. But you just think that there's enough teams between them that will get some.
And could you see
together.
Spurs doing a run that would get them in there? I don't know.
Okay, so we're all going for Newcastle. More or
11
less,
points to
except
make
for
up.
John and Nathan from 5th, is it?
Sorry, I was thinking Champions League, but sorry,
Yeah,
to 5th.
well, 5th is likely to be Champions League with the coefficients.
It almost certainly is. with
Tottenham are
Chelsea.
on 24 and Newcastle are 32.
Yeah, well, Chelsea's form is collapsing.
8.
There's a question mark that's going to be there until Forest hold on, as there was for Villa last year, as there was for Newcastle the year before. Until they just do it, nobody will believe it.
I don't see Forest finishing top 5.
And then who have you got? Like you got our Fulham and all of them going to be there come the end of the season. Brighton have already fallen off. Brentford have already fallen off. You imagine Spurs will climb up the table, but
whether it's enough,
like you'll still have Villa, Chelsea, Forest, City, all between them.
Yeah,
and Chelsea. Okay, right. Okay, let's go on to City. Speaking of them, they're playing West Ham. City with a rare 3 o'clock on a Saturday game. We went for this one instead of the Brighton Arsenal game. 1, because I'm kind of sick of talking about Arsenal, and 2 is because City, they're still that intrigued. Like I am surprised to see 8 Man Cities on that table.
I was quite surprised too. Even
Only
though
me and Nathan have both gone for draws. 1 all for him, 2 all for me, and everybody else has gone for a comfortable enough City win, including you, Kathleen.
Did I go 2-1?
Well, okay, yeah, City to win.
I don't think it would, like, I have 2-1 there. I don't think it'll necessarily be a confident City win. I think it'll be very similar to like the Leicester game and any of the victories they have had over the last while, where West Ham very much look like they could score and probably should take their chances. I just don't think they will, and I think City will manage to scrape past them. It was funny because even earlier when I was looking back on what I had submitted in my picks, and I was like, wow, I can't believe I only put 2-1 for City. I still have it in my head that they're good. At home.
To a poor West Ham team.
And then I was like, no, Kathleen, remember what they've actually done over the last couple of weeks and how they have been playing. But it's just funny how it's really hard after so long to take that out of your head. But no, I don't think this will be a confident win from them by any shape of the imagination. I don't think now that they've got that little break in their poor form that they're all of a sudden going to go on a run of form. They're not in that place at the moment at all. And it's really flipping frustrating that, Arsenal haven't capitalised on that. But
they haven't. The Liverpool have come and been the new City. When they beat Forest in the middle of this run, it was 3-0. It was one of those ones that looked better on paper than it probably was in reality, but still one of those ones that you say no matter how they did it, they'll kick on now, and they absolutely didn't. They were arguably worse after it. I watched the Leicester game, Will, and there is a possibility that it triggers something.
Yeah,
it triggers a kind of we're still City, we'll go out, we'll just be a little bit less eyes on us. We're 3 o'clock on a Saturday, we're at home to a poor team, we'll be okay, we'll just go out and be ourselves and we'll win. That worries me about picking the draw here. But watching the 90 minutes, Leicester, Jamie Vardy should have had a hat-trick in that game. And that's between him not staying onside when he should have and would have had the same chance if he did versus missing a sitter. There was just a few, and that's Leicester.
Yeah.
They are wide open. I don't know how any team isn't going to score against them at some point. And I think back over Christmas, I think back the Spurs conversation we just had. I think back of Man United going there and beating them with Diallo, and I think back of Villa beating them at home. And it's like I've watched every Villa game this season, and that's the most comfortable. It was 2-1, but it was a last minute goal from City. Should have been 4 or 5, and it was like playing, routine home Saturday afternoon game against a team 15th, 16th in the league. That's what it felt like. And when United,
absolutely normal.
United have got up, played well, probably could have lost the game and were lucky to win it. But that was, oh my God, what's going on at United? It was the opposition. This isn't pretend. Like, this is actually happening. That Leicester could have beaten them.
Yep.
Easily.
You're back.
And Everton, came back, every time they scored over, Christmas and the couple of weeks before, they panicked. They did the same against Leicester. They score and then have no confidence to keep it going. So it's almost law of probability I've gone for a high score and draw in this game.
Yeah, like if you're backing City, you're backing them on legacy and what they've done previously.
Yeah,
so, like Pep has got this remarkable record on the first fixture after New Year's. He's won all of them in the Premier League era that he's been there. But obviously, City have been a lot better in pretty much every turn of the year that he's actually been in charge. I saw some positives in the performance. Obviously now Silvinho, who I thought was incredibly busy against Leicester, has finally now got a goal, so that's a weight off his shoulders. Erling Haaland had endured by his high, very, very high standards, a miserable 13 games or so in front of goal. Against Everton in particular, Haaland was snatching at chances. He was passing away the responsibility to Foden a few times during that game when Haaland would have taken a shot earlier in the season and probably scored. Maybe it's just kicked into gear for him now that he's actually scored a goal. I thought Kevin De Bruyne looked fitter and sharper in that game and got into positions where he was more able to influence the game. But I take the point entirely that City could have conceded 2-3 goals against Leicester very, very easily indeed. So they worry you, and I'm sure there is a concern about their own confidence internally within the Manchester City camp. West Ham also very difficult to analyse at the moment. So they were pathetic against Liverpool the weekend just gone by, but it just had a 4-game run without defeat before that, and it felt like maybe they had actually just steadied the ship a little bit under Lopetegui. And then your concern would be actually look at the way that they played against Liverpool. So are Liverpool an anomaly, or are West Ham open to conceding goals against City at the weekend? I'm not sure.
Is the answer yes to both? Is the answer that they started poorly against Liverpool and the game was gone from them, and you're playing against the best team in the country and you give up a little bit?
Possibly.
And that's not a good sign for a team. But then again, you have Lopetegui against Guardiola, and there'll be, there's always that little bit of extra interest when it's the two Spanish coaches. I don't know. I don't madly trust West Ham.
No.
My pick is on City, I have to say.
Yeah.
And I imagine you guys are both legacy picking, but I think the opposition isn't hurting you picking City either. West Ham aren't there, really. See Mikel Antonio posting on Instagram. He's on crutches.
Good to
looks
see him on his
okay.
feet.
It was a very much a kind of I really realise how valuable and precious life is and so like that. And then with the obligatory, and I will be back on the pitch very soon. Hammers.
Is that just the natural sports person's way of dealing with things?
It's like
my leg has
34, you've just crushed your leg.
been compound fracture. My beautiful car has been destroyed, but I'll be back next season.
No, fair play to him. I do hope to see him. Actually, he's always been he's one of those players I think you like to watch. You know what I mean? He's so tenacious and good. But they don't have him obviously for the rest of the season. I don't think Fulkrug. He'd got in the pre kind of like everybody is a big signing era. He would have gone down as one of those classic. You bought him off the Euros.
Off the back
of
Euros. They are West Ham. I think it's 8 points clear of the relegation zone at the moment as well. So sometimes there is a kind of maybe a slight overreaction because it's West Ham to a certain extent, but they should be obviously doing better.
There was a sense that his job was in big danger before the recent run that you mentioned before. If you go out and get hammered to Liverpool, you don't expect to pick up points necessarily. You're going to get hammered, and then you go to the Etihad and put them back in form almost. If City go out and win this comfortably, I'd say he's gone. They're playing Villa in the Cup next Friday, so maybe he gets that game, and then you kind of see how it goes after that.
On Lopetegui as well, I think I saw during the week, Real Madrid sacked him in fewer games than Ruben Amorim has had at Manchester United in this little run. It was being used as a kind of a ruthless idea that Real Madrid just do not accept mediocrity. So if you even have a bad 6 or 7 games, you are gone.
Yeah.
But
West Ham and Crystal Palace are the two teams that go that way, isn't it? How long did Frank de Boer get? 6 games?
Too long, according to Dame Delaney.
Right, let's look at our last game. It's Monday Night Football. And who would have thought at the start of the season that I would have marked off straight away? It was a choice between City and West Ham and Brighton and Arsenal. There was never a chance we weren't talking about Wolves versus Nottingham Forest on Monday Night Football. Almost everybody has gone for a Forest win here. Colm, Owen, Ger, Kathleen, Nathan, Phil and Shane. Myself and Will tied at the top of the table, let's not forget. And by tied, I mean Will's 3 points clear. We've both gone for a 1-1 draw here, and
So
John
strong.
has also gone for the same score. My logic isn't actually a knock on Forest. It is an assumption that 5-game win streaks don't come along that often, and they tend not to turn into 6-game win streaks. It's just the law of big numbers, really, is that things don't continue to go your way. Wolves have shown massive improvement since they got rid of
Cunha is suspended. Is the only
I know, I was coming to that. Yeah, it is important. It is important. Cunha will not be playing. He's going to miss that game and the FA Cup game for an FA ban. It's a big deal. I do think, though, that Wolves have turned into a real team since they got rid of fake manager Gary O'Neill and brought in a real manager. And I don't think they're getting relegated. I think they look like they're a decent mid-table team. And if they are a decent mid-table team, that's not an easy place to go and win. I think a decent result here for Forest under their current form is an away point. And I just again, I wouldn't rule out them winning by an odd goal, as you guys have gone for. But I would lean towards the draw.
I just don't think we've given Forest enough credit for what they've done this season so
really
far.
Trying not to take away credit from it.
This is the thing, like, they had 32 points last season, just survived from relegation. That's the lowest points tally ever in the Premier League history to not be relegated.
Yeah.
And now they're up there competing with like Arsenal, Chelsea. I know it's a bit of an anomaly of a season in that City aren't up there. But you know, like,
but even
you're
to win
talking
5
about,
Premier League games in a row,
yeah,
like, is incredible.
you're talking about Mo Salah, Isaac, Haaland. Maybe he's always going to be up there.
You put some respect
and
on Chris Wood's name. Yeah.
But he is up there, like the top 4 at the moment, and it's kind of mental. And I know, obviously, there's probably not a massive contingent of Nottingham Forest fans in Ireland, and you're always going to
more
slightly,
than you expect.
yeah, but you're always going to slightly lean towards talking about the bigger teams. But what they've done this season is absolutely sensational.
That's mad.
Yeah,
and it's important to remember as well, it's not with a litany of new signings in the way they did in the previous 2 years. This is the team that was there last year, more or less. This is, it's Morgan Gibbs-White, it's Alanga, it's Chris Wood, it's Hudson-Odoi, it's,
You've just reeled
Joe
off
Williams, whoever. But also players.
Footballers there.
Yeah, that's the whole point. It was like their team seemed like it should have been a lot better than it was last season. And now it's outperforming where you think it was. And I have to say, like, I don't think Nuno is someone, like, obviously he was a disaster at Spurs. I'd say he was fairly well respected at Wolves without ever being thought of as, I don't think people were celebrating the Spurs appointment thinking, oh, that's a smart one. I think they saw him as a mid-table guy.
I think what we saw at Forest before is that it looked like a collection of players, whereas this year it looks like a team. And yes, they are definitely performing way outside of what you expected of them, but they were definitely like a high mid-table team in previous years if they were able to be brought together in the way that they have been this season.
Very decent in defence. Manilo's a very, very good player and very good leader, a very good kind of like old school organiser at the back as well that you kind of want to build your team around as well. So it's not just all the kind of sexy attacking players either.
I think, like, when it comes to 2 teams in particular at the moment who are probably overperforming based on their wages and their budget are Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest. So both of those teams are ridiculously well drilled with 2 managers who set teams up very well defensively. And in a world in the Premier League where a lot of teams are conceding cheaply, we already talked about Spurs, these are 2 teams who make themselves very difficult to beat. And then when you look at Nottingham Forest, with the players that they have at the other end of the field, if they are going to be solid and they can move the ball quickly forward, Wood is kind of a freakish finisher. He has scored, like, if you looked at his DVD of the year, such a range of goals that he scored. I think of the one that he scored against Everton a few weeks ago, which you're just not expecting. It's an incredibly low percentage shot, and yet he scores. And he seems to always be there for headers against teams as well. You add in the quality of those technical players that you've just reeled off as well, Mick. Like, Nottingham Forest carry a serious threat in the break, and Yuri Elanga, you were thinking he left Manchester United where he felt he didn't really get a chance. I think he's 11 points ahead of them in the table at the moment. So they've been really good at acquiring players who maybe weren't valued at the other clubs that they were at in the way they should have been.
I think they're very decent. I think you said earlier you didn't think they were going to hang on for a Champions League spot. I think you can give them plenty of respect and still say that they've been out achieving their talent level at the moment. And I have to say, when I've watched them, I thought they've been tenacious and they've been match winners. Say the game against Villa where Duran, Villa were fairly in control of that game. And what I admired about Forest was they were very, very hard to break down. It was at the City ground, but they played quite defensively. And they had an unbelievably good structure that was hard to break down. And there was I kind of was saying, if Villa score, they could win this by 2 or 3 because things will open up and they'll play into their hands. And what happened instead was Villa did score, and Forest completely changed, and they pressurised. They put so much pressure on, and it just became this inevitable game-chasing performance, and they got 2 instead of 1. Now, what I will say is most of the times you'll only get the 1. And I do worry that I think things will even out over the course of the year where these performances will only be good enough for draws or for losses, and that'll just happen over time. And I think that they'll do well, they'll continue to play well, and they should keep their confidence up, and they could qualify for Europe. I just don't see them in this sort of like insane title running form lasting for long. I don't think they're actually good enough. I don't think they're that far ahead of the teams that they're playing.
Yeah.
No, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
To be fair, I just think that while they're in this position, they should be given the credit for what they've
100%.
done.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's been one of the most fun recent seasons, I think, just for the fact that every week it's impossible to judge who is going to perform well. And I know Liverpool are running away with the actual title, but the rest of it is very, very entertaining.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, you say it's hard to judge unless you're Will O'Callaghan. That's who you got this week. Let's see the table one more time. 46 points. Now, the overall table, if we could.
As the philosopher
Anyway.
Kendrick Lamar once said, Michael, stay humble, which is where I'm staying at the actual half point of the season. Assuming that we're not going to roll this into the Club World Cup and be like every single player.
We'll end it at the end of the Premier League and then see how we go. But yeah, Will's on 46 points at the halfway stage. I'm on 43. We've got John and Nathan on 41, but not in great form. Owen got 0 points last week, so he's on 38. Kathleen up to 36 with a brilliant Christmas, putting herself into contention. Shane's on 34. Ger also with 0 points. His wacky predictions have slumped him into joint second last.
Is
with
this
Phil.
the point where Jared starts going 0-0 in every fixture, or
And-
like 5-0, and just starts to try and game us here?
Look at this. Talk about Notts Forest coming up from almost getting relegated to almost winning the league. Colm Buig, 30 points, bottom of the table. Last year's champion. He's doing a Leeds 91, 92, 93 here.
He's lost the
on
baby
it.
bounce. He had that last year. The golfers always get the little baby bounce. His is gone.
Very much so. He'll have to have another baby. Okay, that's who you got. We'll see you next week.
Football on Off the Ball.
With William Hill, you can boost your winnings on every game with new Bet Builder Extra. Only with William Hill. Download the app today. 18 plus gamblingcare.ie.
This is News Talk.